Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're back with another live broadcast for all of you today on the Kev Baker Show, right here on the home of KBS, Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com. All excited, I'm looking forward to today's show. It is going to be a plethora of woo, mystery, intrigue. I tell you, it's going to have it all today. And I've also got a very special co-host with me as well. But before we go anywhere, this is KBS and we're coming to you live from Glasgow, Scotland. We go all the way from America to Australia and just about everywhere else in between. So wherever you are, whenever you are, thank you for being here. Remember to tell all your friends about the show. Spread the word around on social media. And if it's not this show you like, there are 33 shows to choose from. There's something for everyone at Truth Frequency Radio because we are free speech. There's shows you're going to love, there's shows you're going to hate. But that's okay because we provide for everyone. In fact, on KBS, we provide. And I just let you decide. It's enough for me to know that you're listening and thinking for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. So give yourselves a big pat on the back if you're here, tuned into this broadcast. It's going to be a doozy. Before we bring on today's guest, I've got my co-host, the man with the mysterious hat. Yes, Jimmy, I'm liking the hat today. I've taken a leaf out of your book. I've gone for the hat. It's nothing to do with the fact I've got this kind of lockdown hair going on. I'm that midpoint between short hair, like the crew cut, and having a head of hair again. It's that in between, Jimmy, the void, that kind of, it's not looking good, man. It's all here, there, everywhere. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, I'm hanging by a thread. I'm running on empty in FEMA Region 9. But I'm excited today because I feel a sense of I feel the energy. I feel the mystery just outside of my grasp. And I'm hoping today I can get some satisfaction.
It's almost like you're a KBS intern at the moment. Because you come on a Wednesday, you do your own shows as a special guest. But now the past 2 weeks, last week we got the first time ever I met the Jimmy that listens because we had Dr. McCairn on. Today, again, I'm kind of taking you out of your comfort zone. It's not something you dislike, it's just maybe something you don't cover as much on your own show. And we're going to be getting into phantoms, monsters, mysteries, Oak Island. Oh, Jimmy, it's too much to list, man. So you're like an intern. You're KBS in training, dude.
I am, and you know, I do have my alter ego who's real quiet, and I think I may go into Jesse mode today. But I can say this about my personal paranormal experience. I'm gonna say this: the things I experienced, I would never want to experience again. I just, you know, it was terrifying. It was horrifying, and I avoid trying to find that niche, as it were. So I applaud your guest, and I would not wait to get into some of these investigative reports that I've heard so much about.
Dude, not only is this guy covering the kind of stuff that you maybe aren't too comfortable with, he's boots on the ground. He tackles it with logic, he tackles it with science, and he's been doing this for decades, dude. And for anyone out there, today our special guest is one of my personal favourites. It is our friend from the Phantoms and Monsters website, Lon Strickler. So for anyone who doesn't know, and you should know, and after today's show, if this is your first time hearing Lon, get ready. You're going to have a new podcast to listen to. You're going to have a new website to go to. Because Lon is a Fortean researcher, author, and publisher of the syndicated Phantoms and Monsters blog. He began the blog in 2005, which has steadily grown in popularity and is read daily by tens of thousands of paranormal enthusiasts, investigators, and those, like all of you out there, seeking the truth. His research and reports have been featured on hundreds of online media sources. Several of these published reports have been presented on various television segments, including the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, no less, ladies and gents, Sci-Fi's Paranormal Witness, Fact or Faked, Paranormal Files, and Destination America's Monsters and Mysteries in America. And it's not just the Kev Baker show you can hear him. It's not just on Warrior Mode from time to time you can hear him. He is also on one of the world's biggest radio shows from time to time, Coast to Coast. And he has his own radio thing going on as well. And we'll find out all about that. All about Beyond Explanation and Arcane Radio along the way as I welcome back Lon Strickler. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. How are y'all?
Oh, I'm doing really good, Lon. Really good. Bit stormy out there today, but I tell you what, I knew tonight's show was coming down the pike at me, so that had me smiling all day long. I knew Jimmy would be here with us as well. And for the audience out there, I first met Lon over on Warrior Mode with Bill Bean. And I can't thank Bill enough for that because I'd always been, at time to time, using stories from Phantoms and Monsters website. And it was kind of surreal for me to meet the guy behind it. And like I said in opening, Lon isn't somebody like myself who just likes to read about the paranormal and look at all the kind of woo like I do. I'm a host, but Lon is a genuine researcher, boots on the ground when it comes to cases. And Lon, we're going to talk about a whole host of things tonight, okay? But tell people where they can listen to you as well, about the radio show, YouTube, stuff like that before we get going.
Well, the YouTube channel is Beyond Explanation. It's only, I think we've only been around about 8 months now, but I've got my radio show, which is Arcane Radio, which we do live every Friday night at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. There are other radio shows starting on there. We've got 5 on there now. Plus, we've got mini docs on there, as well as a few of my cases that I've done over the years. So it's expanding. We're building up our subscribership, and it's, we're going to just continue to build up on that.
That's the way to do it, brother. That is the way to do it. So, in the role as administrator of Phantoms and Monsters, it's an obvious place to start, Lon. How's things going on that front? We were talking before the show about the number of sightings that are happening, or maybe not happening, right?
Yeah, it's been kind of slow. I mean, I'd say since the beginning of the year, it's kind of slowed up some. I don't know if it's just because of the weather or the COVID or whatever it is, but it has slowed up. We had been very busy with the sightings of the winged humanoids in Lake Michigan, Chicago area since 2017, and that's been fairly steady since that time. And I've actually written 2 books about it. My colleague Tobias Whalen has written a book about it. We've been continuously getting sighting reports, mostly for the past year or so around O'Hare International. Been a lot of sightings. So, that's kind of kept us busy, but that's kind of slacked off as well. So, as far as other phenomena go, with all types of cryptids, we occasionally will get one, but I'm sure as the weather breaks and people start getting out more, it'll start picking up.
Yeah, I imagine when people do start mingling about outside more, I would say we'll get back to business as usual. And before the show, we were kind of talking about UFOs and technology. And the winged humanoids, Lon, I think this is something I suspect, and I'll get your take on this, and we'll get Jimmy in on this as well, but we do see a lot of these winged suits now, call them jetpack men, whatever. And I'm wondering if maybe some of the sightings around O'Hare could be attributed to maybe technology of that sort, that's been trialed, been tested. And in general, I think in the future, we're going to have misreporting. We're going to have people seeing things flying that look like men, flying humanoids, but it could have a technological explanation. Are you exploring that angle at all, Lon?
Yeah, we've been looking at that from the very beginning, back in 2017. Um, the first thing we started looking at were people in squirrel suits and drones.
Yeah.
And you know, we kind of discounted that eventually because some of the maneuvering that these winged humanoids have been doing is something pretty impossible with a drone or someone in a suit. You know, we've looked at all angles and talked to experts in those fields, and they've pretty well discounted all of it. So at this point, now I do believe there may have been some misidentifications as far as large birds go. They do have migrations of sandhill cranes and occasionally blue herons, but that I think that has maybe happened a few times, and we tried to dispel any of those. But at this point right now, we're up over 120 sightings that we believe are good sightings. And, you know, we base it on our experience with talking to witnesses, taking their anecdotal evidence and weighing it, and sending people on our team out with boots on the ground to check it out. We have the same people working with us as before, and you know, we're pretty experienced in this now. I believe that we do get a report of something you know, flying around. We can kind of tell if what we're getting is some type of anomalous being or a bird. So you know, that's where we're at now.
Now, Jimmy, let me bring you in here. Are you already getting a sense of why I admire Lon so much? It's not just some guy sitting there, you know, kind of speculating and stuff like that. We've got a team here, and you can see how from the start, you know, Lon had it in his mind. This could be something that's getting misreported. I imagine, Jimmy, this is the kind of woo that might appeal to you, right? But what do you think about this kind of the winged humanoids, flying suits, drones, and things like that, Jimmy?
Yeah, this is always an interesting thing around the Mothman prophecies and this type of being, this winged being. And for some reason, even, I mean, I remember years gone by where for some reason it seems like this Chicago area has always had a lot of reports of this whatever it is over the years. I think I can recall several times, and there's that many in one period of time. How many did you say there were? 100 and
yeah, since 2011, we've documented 120 sightings or encounters, and those are just cases that we believe are legitimate. We've had a lot of cases reported to us, but we're not really adding those that we don't feel are authentic. You're always going to get somebody going to try to pull the wool over your eyes, or is going to, that's why experience with talking to witnesses really helps a lot. One of the things we do try is try to get them to embellish on what they saw. But the interesting thing about these witnesses, for the most part, has been that when they contact us, and a lot of these times right after the sighting, and they stick to the story. They don't embellish, even when we try to push them to embellish on it to see how they react. They just don't do it. And when we get those type of sightings where it leaves an impression and then the witness has a reaction to it, that's when you really think that you got something.
So somebody could like call you up and they didn't think about it too much. To them, they're just trying to pull the wool over your eyes, and they give you a call and they say, hey, I saw this. And then you guys call them back and you start talking to them and you ask them to expand on the story. But if they don't have they just stick with what they're saying, and they don't try to just come up with this other fantastic story. They're making it up as they go, and you can tell that they're totally blowing smoke at that point because they revealed themselves to you in a way by showing you their
there's no substitute for experience, Jimmy, right? And I'm sure, Lon, you could speak to that. I mean, when you were first taking reports and first running the website, you've probably learned loads over the years, and I would suspect you look back at some of the initial reports you took and you'd probably treat them differently now, maybe, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was fooled a lot early on.
Aren't we all, brother? Aren't we all?
I think every investigator does have, comes up with a report where they kind of get serious about it and it turns out to be nothing, and it does happen. I mean, it happens to the best of us. I try to eliminate that as much as possible now. Occasionally something will get through, but very rarely.
So what's the main kind of thing you're up to now then, Lon, with us spending prolonged periods at home? Any plans for new books or anything like that, dude?
I had all this time on my hands, and I thought, I'd get a book or two done, but I just haven't really done anything at all as far as books go. Writing a book is not as profitable as it used to be. And unfortunately, when you self-publish, the actual promotion of a book is hard to do. And, if you have a publisher, you're going to end up paying them. And, I'm just not really into that. I'm kind of, I do have projects waiting as far as writing books, but I just really haven't felt up to it, in the past year or so. Why that's happened, I don't know, but it's
been a weird time of transition for all of us, brother. It truly has. So listen, when you were on Warrior Mode the last time, we got into some really, really cool topics that really interest me. And one of the things that I've been obsessed with, I would go as far as to say obsessed with, is Oak Island, Lon. That mysterious little island in North Atlantic, off the Nova Scotia coast. And unbeknown to me, when I was in the military, I was maybe 30 miles from there. I was in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I had no idea about Oak Island at the time, though. And this little island then, and it's obviously people will maybe recognise the name from the TV show, The Curse of Oak Island. But Lon, talk to me and Jimmy in the audience about Oak Island. What was your take on what's going on there, man? Or what's gone on there?
Yeah, Oak Island... that is truly an enigma. As far as the treasure hunting goes, I'm really not into the treasure hunting. I'm more so into the history of the place and how things have developed over there, especially with the Lagina's investigation and some of the historical data that they've been bringing up. But it's so scattered. I have no doubt that for a long time, people have been habitating that island, and I do believe that there has been treasure buried there eons ago. And I'm talking back in the medieval period. You may be talking Templar, or even going back further than that with, Vikings, even Merovingian, period. It may go back that far. But as far as Oak Island and treasure, I am starting to believe now that one of the original, either want to call it the money pit or a burial of some type, especially since they've been excavating the the swamp area where it's pretty obvious now that there were ships coming in there. I believe that the period around William Kidd, maybe the mid to late 1600s, up until the English privateer period during the War of Spanish Succession, I believe there were a lot of these privateers bearing treasure in that location for a number of reasons. Actually, Mahone Bay is probably so well protected from the elements as opposed to any place else, anywhere on that East Coast from the United States up through Canada and the Maritimes. I think there was an area there that they actually brought ships into for repair. I think that was used. There were a lot of privateers that were ex-military, ex-royal military. I think that's why a lot of this military evidence is being found there. More recently, they found a signal cannon stand. And who would have it other than the military? I think the privateers used that exactly for what it was, a signal. I think they probably had people living on that island and then privateers coming in there after they raided several ships, either Spanish or French ships, and were splitting up the booty and bearing it, and to avoid giving it all to the government.
There's not much I would disagree. There's not much I'd disagree with there, brother. Not much I'd disagree with at all. And for people that might be unfamiliar, I think it all really stems back to 1795-ish, when the McGuinness brothers were seeing lights on the island, and they took a boat over, and they found this depression in the ground, and they started digging. Then they find a layer of wood, and then another 10 feet down, more layers of wood. And that started this big, huge treasure hunt called, when they're looking for the money pit. So that's where all this kind of stems from in recent times. And I say in recent times because I'm like you, Lon. I think it's now, there's irrefutable proof out there. The way that the Laginas are using some scientists in Canada as well to date things and really make it an authentic investigation. We're seeing dating that's blowing my mind. Some of the stuff that they're coming back with. And I would go with all of the characters that you said above. It's important to note, I'd imagine that the French at one time, they had a big garrison on the Canadian coast. And I think it was on Oak Island. I may have read it somewhere though, but they actually entertained, they welcomed pirates, privateers into the area. So they could have a role in this. I like when you mentioned the Vikings, because I think the Vikings were a lot more places than they're probably given credit for. And when you start to see the layers being peeled back here, and you mentioned the swamp, I mean, arguably this is a man-made swamp with lots of activity, and up until this season, really, they'd found a couple of old bits of wood, and they thought there might be something there, but now that they've drained it, we're now getting a glimpse back at a big road. There's a potential wharf off the front of it. I think this has been used over the ages like you, Lon. I think many different people have been here at many different times. I think as the Laginas and the team dig down, they're going to find more and more history the lower they go, because who knows how long this has been getting used for, right?
Yeah, when it started becoming apparent that there was a pine tar kiln there, I suspect right off the bat that they were using that to repair ships. And then after that, they had already been digging into the swamp area. Quite frankly, that area they're showing now with the eye of the swamp, I do believe that is an area they're going to have to explore, because there may very well be valuables there.
I think they're leaving that for a reason, Lon. I think that's been left. Yeah, I'm like you. And whether it's an entrance, maybe it could even be an entrance.
Yeah, I think it's some of the later deposits.
Hold that thought, Lon. Hold that thought. Welcome back, everyone. Second part of today's very special broadcast with not only Jimmy Jeans here, but our special guest, Lon Strickler, is in the house. He's the man behind Arcane Radio, Beyond Explanation over on YouTube, and Phantoms and Monsters website. But today we're talking, before the break, about one of my favourites, Oak Island. And I don't think you can have a conversation about Oak Island, Lon, without bringing in the Knights Templar, right? Because I think there's enough to suggest that they may have had some input there. What's your take on it?
Oh, I believe they were there at some point. Now, did they actually bury anything? I don't know. I mean, it's possible. The evidence is there that they most likely had shown up there. Between the Cathars and then the Cathars and then the Sinclairs and all that, I think there may have been a point to where they did make the trip to the New World. Now, if they I do believe they might have landed at several locations, but some of the evidence is there on Oak Island, so maybe they did show up there.
One of the most fascinating pieces of evidence that I think they've uncovered so far is through the metal detector. One of my favourites on the show, Gary Drayton, him and his Bobby Dazzlers and his Top Pocket finds. But the lead cross, Lon, it's a small lead cross, and then in another episode you see Rick and the team going over to Dom Castle in France, where the Knights Templar were imprisoned, obviously, when they became the bad guys after being the good guys, as it happens in medieval Europe. One day you're popular, the next day you're getting burnt at the stake. But in there, I mean, for me, looking at the cross they had in their hand and looking at some of the images they were looking at on the wall, it's hard to get away from, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting piece of evidence. The whole problem is you got to figure out where it's tied into, what the connection is.
Yeah.
You can't discount that maybe somebody other than the Templars may have had that thing and dropped it. I don't know. You just don't know. But the fact that Nova Scotia as a whole has several carvings on rocks and such that are Templar related kind of does add that to the equation.
Yeah, definitely. Jimmy, the Knights Templar, it just adds even more mystery and mystique to a story that hardly needs it when you've got all the pirates and everything else you could get into,
I know. And considering that there's talk that these Templars were carrying and also protecting the wealth of people.
Yeah.
So this could have been a potential, stashing point or someplace, because as they were saving all these goods and material for people, protecting it with their forces, they had to have a stronghold someplace where they would, pile everything up and that they could protect. So, it's possible, the more, it's funny, a lot of these sites, the further down you dig, the more crazy it gets. I mean, just the top layer, you find a bunch of stuff and you think you found something, and then all of a sudden...
on the island itself as well, Jimmy, there's something called Nolan's Cross. And this is it's undeniable, However, it's a cross in the end of the day. What does it prove? Well, it proves that there's a cross there. Does it prove there's treasure there? No. But it certainly matches up that with everything to point that they were there at one point. And I'd have thought about this one time. It's a theory that I've come up with. It's not even a theory. It's just something that's maybe worth a bit of discussion. But what if with the Templars at the time, there was obviously a bit of arguing going on with France from time to time as well. You know, maybe there was not a deposit of treasure made by the Templars. But what if we cast our minds further back to when we were looking at Viking raids and when they were marauding over Europe and things like that, and then potentially made their way over the Atlantic. We know they were in Iceland for sure, and then they get over to Canada. What if maybe the Templars were sent out on some kind of retrieval mission for something that was there far earlier, Lon? Because we can see that this place has been there for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, the Vikings themselves were, you know, they did a lot of traveling. I mean, they even gotten into the Mediterranean, into Greece and into Sicily, and they had done a lot of marauding in those areas. Spain especially, they were heavy in Spain. Then, of course, you know, a few of them settled down into France. You know, the Normans were mostly Vikings, and you know, that was that was the end of the Merovingian, and then the Frankish people started habitating there. You know, it's interesting when you start talking about European and British history, how all these people are connected somehow.
No, you're right.
You know,
yeah,
just different. Yeah, and you know, when you talk about Oak Island and the fact that, and I think we've proven that the Vikings did make it to North America at some time the 10th century or 11th century, that they definitely did make it there. Their connection, they may have a connection to Oak Island as well. So, yeah, you know, maybe the Templars were sent there somehow to retrieve something. I don't know, you know. I had thought about that once before, about artifacts being taken by the Vikings, and then some groups trying to recover that if they thought something had been left somewhere else. You know, that's an interesting concept. But
the only reason I came up with that, Lon, was because you've got that, is it Zena Halbeck, and the author that passed?
Yeah.
And she had the map. And I was thinking, well, if somebody in France gave the Templars a map and basically pointed them towards where the money pit or where a potential site was, I mean, somebody had knowledge of it before the Templars set off. You know what I'm saying? So definitely hints to being something earlier going on there. And I don't know, I'm kind of with you. I like what you were saying there. The Laginas, you know, I think the island itself, the two guys that are there just now, in my opinion, because they're already self-made millionaires, probably the best people to be running the project. And would you agree with that? Because they seem to be like you. They seem to be like me. It's about the story for them, right? More than chasing the wealth.
Well, you know, they're being funded with the show and everything too, and you know, there's a lot of money going into that production.
You better believe it's a money pit. It's been people throwing money down it for 200 years.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be well funded. So, you know, it was funny because early in the show, they seemed to be getting frugal at some point. And I think as the show became more and more popular, I think the production company and others started putting money into it. And they don't seem too frugal now. No. You know, it seems that anytime there's an indication that something may be found, money's no object now.
Exactly. And that company they work with, I can't remember the name of them, but they must love doing that. You're
Oh
talking
yeah.
multi-million-pound projects every single year, you know?
I heard somewhere, and I don't know how true this is, but I heard somewhere that the project goes anywhere between $6 and $8 million a year as far as actual monetary investment into the actual investigation. That doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me either. When you see the size of the plant kit that they get in,
Yeah.
and you're talking top science, top technology being deployed. That's expensive, Lon. Some of the testing that they're getting done, I don't think you can just walk into a lab and get it tested, you know?
Yeah, and it's high price testing too.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
And they're getting it quickly. I mean, it seems that it's the results are coming back instantaneously, as opposed to waiting several weeks or months for results. They're on the short list quite obviously now. So yeah, I don't think money's going to be a problem. And I think this, you know, I complain to myself that I keep getting suckered into watching this show every year because it seems to just keep going and going and going. And you know, you're trying to figure out, well, when is something going to turn up to kind of ring the bell and say, hey, we know what's going on. Well, this show's going to be on a while because they're really committed now to coming up with more of the history. If they don't ever find a thing, they're going to definitely rewrite the history books eventually about what happened to Oak Island.
Yeah, they're basically filling a museum on the go as we watch every season, you know?
Yeah.
I do like the brothers. I'm glad they've got the place, and I hope, you know, I hope they get the answers that they're seeking for. I still suspect, though, that over time, and we talked during the break about one character, Samuel Ball, a slave who escaped slavery, joined the British to fight the Americans, and ends up on Oak Island, a cabbage farmer, a humble cabbage farmer, and then he ends up owning like so many lots. He's a very wealthy man. Come on, Lon, he must have found something, right?
Landowner there too, who seemed to be paying in Spanish gold when he went to town and was buying supplies. So I think several people have had their hand in the treasure. That's why I believe there have been several deposits made there over time. And, you know, if the pirates didn't get back to picking, or privateers didn't get back to picking it up, it was there for the taking. How much is left? I really don't know. You know, I guess I would just have to wait and see. You know, early in the show when they started showing the possible documents and the gold artifacts that were coming up in the well or on the on the camera they were showing. Yeah, there's something down there. Are they going to be able to get it? I don't know. As far as that area has been dug so much, it's going to get more and more dangerous to even go in through there, I believe. But, you know, if they can find some way of shoring it up, then they may be able to retrieve what's there.
I think if this thing that came upon the world last year hadn't come along, the plan was to really dig out the whole money pit area with individual kind of caissons. I think that's the only way you're going to definitively do it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, they're going to have to make a wide area search, and you know, if they can do it safely, then fine. But that's going to be the big deal. You know, that's where they're talking about investment. That's where it's going to go to.
Yeah.
They're going to have to go down at least 130, 140 foot, you know, maybe an acre or more. And they're going to have to, that's the only way they're going to retrieve what they believe is there.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. So we mentioned the Masons there. We've got a good friend of the show, listener, Paulie, we call him, Paul Sinclair. Sinclair. And I used to have a co-host called Johnny Whistles, Johnny Sinclair. The St. Clairs, obviously, the Freemasons, and then you've got Rosalind Chapel to throw in there as well.
Yeah.
the Freemasons away from Oak Island. I mean, it's a fascinating topic, is it not, Lon?
That is. I have been kind of hooked into the whole Sinclair connection with the Templars and then Rosslyn Chapel for years now, and it's a very interesting story. And when you go even into the Mary Magdalene Holy Grail thing, I mean, it's an interesting story. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if she actually did make it there, but I think there is some proof that it was possible.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I mean, Jimmy, I see you nodding there. What do you think? Do you think there's something to that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I do actually. So yeah, I do. And you keep referencing the Merovingians, and I think that is an important aspect of every single thing we're talking about right now. And if you maybe you should expand a little bit on the Merovingians for people, because I don't think a lot of people even know who they are or what they're responsible for.
Well, the Merovingians were basically a dynasty. It lasted about 250 years. It actually started at the beginning of the what they call the Dark Ages, the early medieval period, and lasted up until about the mid 700s. They were basically the rulers of Gaul and the Frankish territories, and then now this was before the Normans and before the the Vikings and all. But this they kind of ran the show, and anything that did happen during that period in that part of Europe, they were involved in it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at a map there. I'll put this over to TFR in a moment. But that's a great swathe of Europe there that you're looking at, right enough.
Oh, yeah.
Big time. Jimmy, this does seem like something you're really into, actually. You've kind of perked up here. This is your kind of woo now, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of stuff I like to get into too. And so I think you see a lot of this this bloodline that's still there from the Merovingians, and I think one of the key things too is, and maybe if you know any about this, I'm always interested in hearing more, is the tribe of Dan, and the tribe of Dan coming over into Europe from the Middle East, from what was Palestine. And that bloodline still present today, the tribe of Dan. And the tribe of Dan was the symbol for the tribe of Dan was the red equilateral cross that we see, and this displayed a lot of times. You'll see Templar with the red cross on there. So I was curious, have you ever seen any parallels between the tribe of Dan and the Templars?
Well, there may have been some. I have heard of the tribe of Dan before. Palestine in general. I mean, anytime during the Roman period of Palestine, Judea, and all, this was there was just a lot going on. Basically, I mean, the fact that when you go back to the Holy Grail thing, and you may start talking the Da Vinci Code, if that's even a thing. But it was a lot of the information that came up from that, though it may be kind of obtuse to a point. But the fact that some people do believe that Mary Magdalene became part of that whole thing, made her way to southern France, and then became part of the eventual bloodline of the Merovingians. That may very well be true.
Yeah.
I don't think we really have the evidence of that yet. We may very well have it at some point. I think when DNA testing gets to a point where they can really Oh, I don't know, when they're going deeper into that.
You mean when the
uh,
AI makes sense of what we call junk DNA and it starts finding the patterns?
well, I tell you, junk DNA is turning out more and more to be very relevant
Oh, heck yeah.
as to who we were. I mean, who we are.
Isn't that just who we are, though, Lon? Because we don't understand something. Now, well, doesn't matter. It's junk. Don't worry about that, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, they just didn't understand what it was.
Yep.
But that's changing. I mean,
The same as the periodic table. We think, oh, we're the greatest. We've got everything in the periodic table. Yeah, from this planet, what we know.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
always open to more interpretation, shall we say, especially the DNA stuff. And I'm a paranoid android at times, dude. I sometimes look at these companies like 23andMe and Ancestry, and I think, yeah, very cool finding out your 1050th Portuguese or something like that. But it's what in the back of my mind, and listen, folks, I'm telling you right now, I'm laughing at myself here, okay? But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, are they trying to find Nephilim DNA? Is it this bloodline that you're talking about? Who knows what they're getting into on?
Oh, I think you can go deep. I mean, maybe they're trying to find extraterrestrial connections somehow. And I think that may very well be able to do that eventually. You talk about junk DNA. That has come up in these genome studies of Bigfoot and other cryptids, but Bigfoot in particular. Well, I knew people who had been involved with that, who had given samples for some of the genome projects, and that junk DNA keeps coming up to where I was even told at some period of time that there was DNA from Judea found in possible Bigfoot DNA. Now, yeah. Now, how that got connected, I don't know. But I had somebody tell me that about 8 years ago, and that there is actual human DNA had shown up in some of these Bigfoot studies. So
I was on with a guy the other night you might know, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was on a panel. I would say I was on a panel speaking, but mainly it was listening. There was like 20 hosts there. But he was talking about some of the DNA stuff as well, Bigfoot, that type of thing, you know. Nothing like what you're saying here, unfortunately, or I'd have definitely been getting into his mind a bit more on that stuff.
Yeah, I had talked to some of the people that were actually doing the study, and some of the indications were that there was DNA coming out of the Middle East. There was some DNA coming out of parts of Asia, other parts of Asia. And now how that's connected, I don't know. I mean, but the fact that there's something that's showing a human connection somehow, I think when they get deeper into that, we may start getting a better idea of what these things are.
Wow, what a conversation this has been in this segment,
Yeah.
Jimmy, right?
Yeah, man. Wild. We've gone all up and back. We've circled back around.
Exactly,
Now,
dude. I'm telling you, we're almost on the break. So, Lon, let people know the websites again before we get to the break, sir.
It's phantomsandmonsters.com. And we've also got cryptidhunters.org. That's the Phantoms and Monsters 14 research team. That are the folks that helped me investigate the reports that come into me. And we've got a 20-member team plus 15 affiliates currently working with us.
Oh, look at this, folks. Phantoms and Monsters 14 research. Cryptid and unexplained phenomena investigations. This is getting dropped into TFR chat room and the Discord right now. Here is a website for y'all to favourite, folks. I can guarantees are going to like that one. So before I get to the break, let me remind everyone that coming up after today's show, don't go anywhere. because my good friend Lucky will be here with the Quantum Connections right here on Truth Frequency Radio. I'll be back tomorrow with Scotty Lopez, all going well. And of course, Freaky Friday is around the corner, and Nano Girl will be our special guest for that. And Jimmy, let people know when they can catch you next, bro.
Tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Pacific on Aftermath.fm, Into the Microcosm, right in between Alex Jones and right before Clyde Lewis. So tomorrow night, 6 Pacific, Aftermath.fm.
Awesome stuff. So just before we do go to the break, you know, the Holy Grail, you mentioned it, Lon. What is it for you? Many people have different ideas. What is it for Lon?
I don't know if it's an object or the bloodline. They make good arguments for both.
Are you like my long lost dad? Are you my long lost dad? Were you roaming around in Scotland in 1976, dude? Because I tell you, man, we're on the same frequency too much here.
Yeah, I think it's the blood. I think the bloodlines has some good arguments to it.
Yep. Jimmy, Holy Grail, what is it for you, man?
I don't know. For me, really, it's the Kev Baker show every day at 2 o'clock.
Oh, that's shameless. You don't need to plug the show on the show, Jimmy. You need to do that when you're over on YouTube or something, man.
No, I get that. No, really.
Hour number 2 on today's Kev Baker show, and yes, I've got a big smile on my face because, you know, when I used to just listen to podcasts, I would be a big fan of Coast to Coast, and they would go for 2-3 hours on this, that, and they would be able to switch from topic to topic, and it'd be awesome. You'd come out the other end of it just wanting more. And when it finally came home to bear that I was going to start my own show, this was the kind of thing I dreamt of. Something in that kind of that kind of way, you know, being able to go over heaps of topics, loads of info, fast flowing, great conversation, great company, and here I am. All these shows later and it's happening, and I want to thank Jimmy for being here today, Lon for being here today, and I want to thank all the other guests that come onto the show as well. Especially since the turn of the year, I don't know. For me, anyway, KBS has definitely been on the up. There's a good vibe here, and Lon's definitely adding to this today. And during the break there, when we came back, it was talking about Masonic symbols everywhere. Quite apt for today's conversation we've been having, with the Templars and everything else in mind. Now we're going to stay in Europe, and we're going to talk about something else. For me, when you get into the true story of a group of people that we're going to get into in a moment, it reads like something out of a really fantastical sci-fi novel. It's like Dan Brown put something together. There's symbols, there's magic, there's artifacts, there's war, there's a whole heap of other things as well. But of course, I'm talking about the bad guys from World War II. Yes, the Nazis. And on the Warrior mode I was last on with Lon, he let it slip that this is another of his topics that he really likes to get into. And then today I had to go to the pharmacy, go and get my inhalers. And I don't know what it is over here in Scotland. There's 2 years waiting in the pharmacy. Jimmy's disappeared from camera. I don't know what's happened there. Now he's back. Now he's back. So 2 people in the pharmacy, and without fail, right? They make you wait for half an hour. And there's like 6 staff there. I don't get it. But one good thing to come from that, it's half an hour of a coast to coast. And I was listening to Peter Lavender, and it was totally random, but he got into the subject of the bad guys from World War II. And he took it back to World War I and a German scholar who had been really heavily into the occult. He'd been looking into all the kind of ancient stuff from Germany, the Nordic stuff, the pagan stuff. And he had set up his own secret society. I think it went something like the name of Thule Gashton Flag. I'm probably butchering it, okay? But it literally, or roughly translated to, the new Knights Templar. Now, I want to come to you then, Lon. Have I got that name totally wrong? Have I butchered it? But the bad guys, it's a fantastical story, isn't it?
Yeah, they kind of the whole Nazi thing, starting with the Vril Society and then into the Tules, who actually became the Nazis. They did consider themselves, even though they did not like these secret societies unless it was their own. They kind of fashioned it on the Masons and the Knights Templar, and of course, they went into a lot of different things beyond that, going into the occult, and then talking about the Aryan race, and connecting it to a novel that was published back in 1870 called "The Coming Race." This was a science fiction novel, basically, written by a member of British royalty. And it became kind of the go-to book that kind of inspired the Vrils. And, it eventually led to the formation of the Nazis and the occult associated with it. It's a remarkable story. What for something like that to take root in German politics and then German society, any society that would go to the extent they did is pretty unbelievable. But it did happen. Of course it happened. And but I kind of blame it on a lot of different things. Spiritualism was very ripe from the mid 1800s up until the time of World War I and beyond that. People were kind of into the spiritualism genre. They started looking for ways to espouse what they called folkism, and that became very popular in Germany, where they were trying to explain who they were through their history. Unfortunately, the history kind of got tangled up in science fiction, and when the Nazis took over in the early 30s, then it just became larger and larger. They were trying to make every excuse possible through some type of evidence they were looking for. I mean, this guy, as far as looking into the Atlantis theory in association with the Aryans and then other peoples who may have been the Aryan race beginnings, and then into the Nordics and such. It's a whole crazy thing, whole crazy concept.
That castle of theirs, I mean, you could use their castle as the set for some kind of movie easily. It looks like something that somebody's made for Dungeons and Dragons or something,
Yeah, Wewelsburg Castle is unbelievable.
There's the name of it. I couldn't remember the name of it, man.
That was Himmler's project there. That kind of really inspired the whole what they called the Black Sun, the Vril, and it was like, it was set up. The dungeon, I mean, not the dungeon, but the crypt of that castle was basically set up like the Knights of the Round. I mean, they had Aryan legend involved with that, Atlantis, the whole 9 yards. It was just like a conglomeration of anything, and anything that stuck that people would buy it, part of their dogma. It was it's just crazy thing. But you got to think, if it happened back then the way it did, leading to the thoughts of world domination into a horrific war, and who's to say something that couldn't happen again?
No, you're absolutely right. And if we don't learn from history, what do they say? It tends to repeat itself. You know,
Yeah.
they say that the bad guys lost World War II, and yeah, absolutely, they lost the war in Europe. We all seen that. However, I tend to say, tongue in cheek, that they won the peace because we see all of their technology, everything else that they were all about. I live in Europe, and I'm pretty sure that the head of the bad guys, his dream was to have a united Europe one day. You know, with Germany at the helm. And now here we are, all these years later. They lost the war, and we've got a one European Union thing going on. We luckily got out, and it's pretty much Germany that's at the helm of it. They're the richest country in it, so they didn't do too badly, having lost. And I want to talk to you about that because we kind of touched on it on the show. The rat lines and them making their way to South America. I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. It happened. What say you, Lon?
Are you talking about you know, all these Nazis moving into Argentina and Ecuador and Paraguay? Yeah, the whole theory about possibly that Hitler made his way to Argentina, I don't know about that. I mean, there are people that have tried to prove that for decades now, but a lot of the former Nazis did end up there. Of course, they captured a few of them, and they found out a lot of them were there. So, it was a perfect place for them because the president of Argentina, it was basically a fascist government. They welcomed the Nazis there. I mean, this was just up their alley. So, I mean, a lot of them did make it there.
So what do you think about their base down in Antarctica then? Do you think that was something that they initialized, or do you think they were going chasing some of the stuff that might be under the ice?
They may have, you hear about that they were looking for a passageway to the inner Earth, that they thought some artifacts may have been found there. I don't know. I really haven't seen anything to this point that proves that or even comes close to it. They were all over the place. Saying the German archaeologists had gotten involved with, Himmler was sending them out everywhere, and they were looking for the Holy Grail. They were looking for the Spirit Destiny. They were trying to prove the Aryan race and a connection to the Atlanteans. To my, they didn't find anything, but who says that maybe some they did, but I do know, and we all know, that if it wasn't for the end of World War II, Operation Paperclip, where these Nazis were brought to the United States, we wouldn't have a NASA program as we may not even made it to the moon.
Yeah, it wouldn't even have got off the ground, pardon the pun,
Yeah, they had knowledge. It's pretty hard to believe that it was something they came up with. They were close to
now, Lon,
atom bomb.
Lon, I'm going to call you back. We're back. Lon, my apologies, brother. My apologies.
No problem.
Amateur hour here on KBS. I should have just kept going. Me, my smart bloody ideas. Where were we? We were in the Nazi Bell. That's where we were. Take it away with the Nazi Bell, Lon.
Yeah, I think that the Nazi Bell was a result of some of the technology that they gleaned from the Zernica crash in Czechoslovakia back in 1937. They were empowered. The Nazis were empowered by then. That crash itself, not a whole talk about that crash.
I've never.
Some
This
think
is
it
this,
was.
this is one of the first times I'm really hearing about it, Lon. To be honest with you. Oh, we've lost him totally this time.
Can you hear me?
You're back now, I think, Lon. Yep, I think so.
Okay. Back in the summer of 1937, it was Zernica, Germany. Now, Zernica, that time, it's part of Poland now. I thought Czechoslovakia, but there was a Czech researcher involved with this. And as they described it, it was a multicolored ball or globe-shaped UFO was seen to fall in a field that actually belonged to Eva Braun's parents. This is before he knew Eva Braun. Now, how that happened, I have no idea.
Just but coincidence, Lon. Just coincidence.
Yeah, I guess so. But anyway, the area was
Okay. What we're gonna do then is, that's what we'll do. Once Lon comes back here, I'm gonna tell him to drop the camera.
Okay.
Just drop the camera off, Lon. That might help. That might help your bandwidth severely.
Okay.
There we go. And I'll put us on to this.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Hear
you perfectly, Lon. You're doing well. You're loud and clear.
They're saying that the crash disc was transported to the Hirschberg SS base and kept under very strong guard and super top security. The disc was 7.6 meters in diameter and 3.8 meters high. It consisted of a large, overwhelming dome encircled by a narrow outer rim, and a smaller flat dome on the bottom with a flat lower section. The top of the dome was also flat and large, structures resembling portholes, but not transparent, or devices that radiated some type of light located near the base of the upper dome. Now, on the lower surface of the outer rim, the craft had 12 lights. The color of the disc was a dull metal gray. There was an insignia on the dome resembling the letter T with two props on its side. The entrance into the disc was found at the top of the upper dome. The general shape of the disc resembled that of a German soldier's helmet with a small protrusion on the bottom. Now, inside the circular cabin were 3 small seats. There were control panels around the dome, and 3 alien beings were found. One was dead, and the other 2 were alive. One of the live aliens died soon after the crash. This sounds a lot like Roswell.
Very.
To be honest with you. And the second live alien remained in custody for about 1.5 months and then died. The aliens were small dwarfs about 1 meter in height with large hairless pear-shaped heads, small looking bodies, and long narrow hands with 4 fingers, gray skin, and large dark slanted eyes. Now, it goes further and further into this. Actually, Hitler had Werner von Braun and Air Marshal Hermann Goering actually go and check this disc out. There were others that investigated. Max von Laue, he was part of the SS. Otto Hahn, Werner Heisenberg was another. But anyway, they took possession of the extraterrestrial craft, and it was one of the factors that they believe possibly inspired Hitler with extreme confidence to start World War II. Now, I think their logic was that they would be able to eventually get the technology to build a super weapon, let alone some type of nuclear device. But I have heard about this Zernica crash for a long time. If it's Factual, I don't know, but I tell you, it does sound like something that may have inspired the Nazis to go further into. Well, I mean, of course, they had already taken, they had annexed Austria and going into the Czechoslovakia, Sudetenland. I think it's actually what inspired them to go into Poland and start the war.
Oh, Lon Strickler, ladies and gentlemen, he's knocking it out the park today. One segment to go. We'll be right back. Well, unfortunately, it's the last segment of today's show because we've got Jimmy Jeans here and we have Lon Strickler. Now, don't forget, folks, you can catch Lon over on YouTube, Beyond Explanation. Lon, let people know when you do your show over there. Friday night, right?
Yeah, Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we're on Beyond Explanation YouTube channel. Awesome,
dude. And remember to check out the websites phantomsandmonsters.com and we've got cryptidhunters.org. Be sure to check that out, folks. Jimmy, before the break, we were getting into, the Nazi Bell stuff. This UFO crash that Lon was talking about that I'd never heard of before. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But Jimmy, what do you make of the whole, when you hear about the bell, what does it ring for you, brother?
Well, I mean, it definitely rings a bell. And especially when you take a look at some of this Admiral Byrd information when he went back down for a second time and his mission was reportedly attacked by vehicles that no one had ever seen before, flying in manners that were unprecedented. And so I mean, the idea that so much engineering comes out of Germany. I mean, if you want to say one thing Germany's known for, it's engineering, right? So I mean, I would say that if they had any way to back engineer something they found, that would definitely be a possibility. And if anybody could do it, it would be the Germans. But I've never heard of this particular crash that Lon's talking about before. And I've been listening to radio for a lot of years, and I've heard a lot of stories going over over the years, over coast to coast, and I've never heard anything about this one before. So it's really interesting. I'm going to look into it too.
Yeah, definitely intriguing. Another thing I would bring up, Lon, and I'll get your take on this, and I'm taking a wild shot in the dark that you might have heard about it. But it was always very bizarre to me growing up that we bothered to send a task force down to the Falkland Islands. Way, way down at the bottom of the world. It took weeks for them to get there. And I always used to think to myself, what on earth? Why? Why even bother, right? And then when I get a bit older and I start looking into the stuff I look into now, you mentioned the Thule Society. Some call it Thule, some call it Thule. You start to look at the Falkland Islands, or the Sandwich Islands, as they're called. And there's an interesting place there called Thule Island or Thule Island. And then you start to factor in its proximity to Argentina and what we were talking about, the location that some of these people went to. And then you've got a whole fantastical story about what may have been going on at the Falklands, and it involves Marconi engineers going missing and disappearing. I think we've got the black goo thrown in there. Lon, have you looked into any of this at all, any of this aspect of it?
Not particularly, but it has always fascinated me as to why the Brits were so dead set into starting that war. I mean, the Argentinians actually went in there first, but and it was German. I mean, it was British, a British colony, British Commonwealth country. But man, I'm telling you, I don't know. I'm like you. I don't really know what was there to really bring in all the services the way they did. Maybe there was something there. I have no idea what it was though.
Nah, same here, dude. It's I don't know. It just seems like surely they could have sat down, had a bit of a treaty. Look, it's the Falklands. What's really there for us to worry about? Give it to Argentina. Yeah. Who cares? You know, I know the people there probably care a bit more. But the Falkland Islands, when I was in the army, it was a punishment posting. If you'd done something really bad, you would end up going down there to the Comsen with the penguins for 6 months. You know, penguin time, we called it. That was it. That was the most dreaded posting in the world. But I don't know, Jimmy, have you ever, like, looked into that whole thing? Marconi side of the Black Goo, the Thule Island, and dude, it's just weird, right?
It is weird, and we have talked about the Black Goo a bit.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that either. You know, I'm very skeptical unless I can see it.
Well, you know, lots of people are looking for little green men, and, you know, maybe aliens exist in a different format, you know, and maybe they come in a different way, you know, like, where do mushrooms come from? You know, where's black goo? Why is there, you know, there's so many molds and these different things. And we just, you know, we're looking for something and we're relating to it from a human perspective.
Damn you, Jimmy. Damn you. You've put black goo back on my radar now.
I'm just saying we're humans, right? So we want to have something we can relate to. But that doesn't mean that these other types of organisms don't have some sort of an intelligence in and of themselves. And, you know, ectoplasmic computing is something that's possible now. So, I mean, maybe that's something they learned from the black goo. You never know. I mean, it's just, you know, I just think that the inner Earth is a key factor in everything that has to do with a lot of the UFO sightings. I think the civilizations inside the Earth are the ones that have the technology to make these saucers fly. And I think, you know, Hitler being on the trail of these ancient artifacts, it put him directly onto it. I mean, if you look, you know, you can go straight back to India and take a look at the Vermana, you know, or the idea of these flying carpets and all this other stuff. I mean, it's, you know, this idea has been around for a while, and if you could harness that, whatever it is, what is that secret thing in the Grail? What's the secret Ark of the Covenant? What is that? What is this energy system or this energy force that could propel these ships off the Earth? I would say that they're using the same principles that the Earth works off of, and that the people that went inside the Earth are the ones that have already figured out how to harmonize that mechanism or those frequencies to make things fly, just like they're going through water. You know, I mean, isn't our atmosphere it's 90% water, isn't it? I think something like that.
Whoa, so Jimmy Jean's taking it deep, man, taking it deep. What do you think of that, Lon? The whole inner Earth type stuff. You ever kind of dip your toe into that?
You know, I have read so much about that in the past. You know, of course, with Admiral Byrd and the so-called inner Earth theory, and then there are a lot of researchers out there that have talked about it, and there's something there, some type of inner world. You know, I have talked to people who have had encounters with alien beings, and, you know, David Eckhart in particular, who swear they were taken to inner Earth caverns and such, and under the oceans to different locations, different facilities by these alien beings. You know, it could be. You know, what David has told me, I believe something like that really did happen. As far as going into something else other than that, I don't know.
When you look at those grays, they got those big black eyes. I mean, it seemed like they'd see good in the dark. You know, they just seem I mean, they're kind of ant-like in a way to me. You know, I mean, I can see them. I don't know.
You know, there is an insectoid type aspect to them. I get what you're saying there as well, Jimmy. Sometimes when I look at the head of them, it's almost starting to take on that insectoid type shape thing going on. I don't know. Do you think all aliens come from outer space, Lon, or do you think there's some here?
No, I believe it's is it outer space or some type of interstellar? I think it's more dimensional or reality based as opposed to going out into the deep space into another universe.
Yeah.
As far as UFO activity and alien beings seen on our Earth, I don't think they're transported to us or come to us through interstellar space. I think it's all done through some type of either time travel through a portal or through a some type of wormhole or such. I think a lot of the lights that people see are something other than spacecraft. Be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said an unidentified flying object. A lot of people just automatically think, "Oh, you're talking about aliens," but it's all in the name. It's unidentified. If you think it's an alien, it's no longer unidentified. Do you know what I mean? So, I am with you. I think a lot of things probably have a terra firma explanation to them, but again, not all of them. And then there's stuff in the secret kind of tech world and military worlds that we don't get to know about. Some of it we get to know about, but not all of it. And that can explain some of it. But do I think there's life out there on other planets? I think it's a no-brainer. Now, is it coming here on a regular basis? I'm not sure. I don't know. I do believe.
If they do, I don't think it's through craft.
No.
If it is through a craft, it's something that's traveling through some type of wormhole. It's pretty hard to believe that they can make the distances that they would need to make in such a short period of time. It's some type of connection tearing the fabric to where they've got to go through something to kind of bend space and time to be able to do that.
It kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier, the junk DNA. Us thinking we've got everything with the periodic table. I think physics and science, it's like the spectrum of light. And much like our eyes can only see a very, very small portion of that spectrum, I think we're only utilizing a very small portion of the scientific spectrum as well. I think we've still got a lot more discoveries before we can call ourselves, air quotes, advanced, you know? And I think on you go, Lon.
I think in some period of time, earlier period of time, we may have been able to use some of that. I think we lost a lot of ability as time's gone by, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
And when you talk about alien beings, in particular the grays, different sizes of grays and such, my theory is that they're evolved human beings. In other words, they're coming back through some type of time travel or some type of other reality back into our reality, back into our Earth plane. I just got this feeling and thinking that, they're coming back either to change time, change something they screwed up at some point, or I think they're trying to make their way back for whatever reason. Who's to say that they have not come back and stopped nuclear war at some point or some other type of?
There's a lot of them. There's a good documentary out, escapes the top of my head, but it shows just that. The amount of activity that you see, unexplained activity around nuclear silos, military bases, the nuclear power plants, and even one of my favourite kind of UFO stories from the UK here, Rendlesham Forest, I mean,
Mhm.
the Americans weren't meant to be storing any nukes over here at the time, but hey, listen, who cares? They weren't meant to be. They were. And of
Oh,
course,
they were there.
yeah, they were definitely there. And again, that whole Rendlesham Forest one, what, we're 40 years on from that now, and we're still none the wiser what actually happened there. But for me, that's definitely our version of Roswell. I know we didn't have a crash there, but Rendlesham, to you, you ever looked into that one at all, Lon? It's an interesting story.
Yeah, there's been so many versions of that. Something happened there. Something definitely did happen there.
Being over here in
There
the
have been.
UK, I'll get your take on this, right? I mean, Rendlesham, 40 plus years ago. And yet, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been one of the most controversial,
Yeah.
divided, infighting. And you're talking about people that I'm not going to name here, but like people that, like yourself, have been on major shows, written books, and getting involved in trolling, and there's different sides. And I don't know, Lon, with that much activity and drama around the whole thing, there's got to be something at the heart of it that definitely led to all this, right?
Well, when you talk about the storage of nuclear weapons, I do know, or I'm pretty sure that was there.
Yeah.
And there seemed to be some type of activity with at least one of the craft above the site where these weapons were stored at. Now, I don't know exactly what had happened, but something did happen. And as far as the actual craft in the woods itself, and the two gentlemen who were part of that encounter, who, by the way, did have to go on some type of medical disability. It took them years to get it, but I think there was an encounter. I think they were actually abducted at some point. I don't think it was one of these deals where they just touched the craft or whatever and were stunned or got some type of injuries because of that. I think they were actually abducted at some point.
Yeah, I've had Larry Warren on the show, and he was one of the guards there. And the story he tells, it definitely sounds as if there was some kind of exchange that went on. Yeah, I don't know if it was like a pre-planned meeting, if they knew something was going to be happening, but for me, it's because of all the kind of crap that happens around the case. It almost feels like somebody would rather the whole thing just go away and just disappear into people fighting with each other. And that in itself leads me to believe there must be something at the middle of it. But we mentioned Roswell. What's Roswell for you, Lon? What's your take on that? Because I've heard many theories on Roswell, but what do you make of it?
Well, I think something did happen. I mean, my father joined the 509th Bomber Wing years after Roswell. But some of the gentlemen who were at Roswell were still part of his bomber wing. And my father would never talk about it. He talked about a lot of these guys talking about it, but he never went into details. And in fact, I went to a reunion at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base back about 15 years ago. And I was able to talk a bit with some of the gentlemen who were at Roswell. And they were very nondescript about what had happened. So my thinking is they were told not to say anything. But from what I gather, something did happen.
You see, this is really, I think it's really cool the way you've described this, because I was in the Royal Signals, so I had a crypto clearance. I mean, I wasn't exactly the top clearance. There was still a couple of levels to go.
Right.
But I know for a fact, even with what I do now, if I was in possession of information that I'd come across at my time in the military, when I was doing the stuff, military people, if it's secret, they don't talk.
Right.
You know, loose lips sinks ships, as they say. And people might think, oh, that's terrible. That's like hiding information. No, it's just there's like some things people need to know, and there's other things you don't need to know. And when you're in the military and something's classified like that, it's not typical that you get people blowing the whistle all the time, Lon, is it?
No, I mean, my father was part of Strategic Air Command, and he never talked about anything. I mean, he would never talk about anything that happened to him in the service. And even, I don't know what he had encountered or things he had heard, but he wouldn't talk about.
Yeah, one can only imagine.
That's the mindset of these guys. I know in the Air Force particularly, but that's just the mindset of these guys. And, they wait till their deathbed to talk about it.
Yeah, that's the usual. Usually it's the deathbed confession.
Yeah.
I'm not really into all this kind of whistleblowers that come out of the secret space programs. And that's not really, I don't know, Lon. That, for me, I like my woo, but it's just a bit, come on, you know?
Well, this so-called disclosure by the government over recent years is, first of all, it's information that's been declassified to the point where it's nothing that's really that fantastic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of stuff that we already knew about, but it's their way, the government's way of spoon-feeding the public disclosure. Now, if it came to the point, say a craft landed on the Washington Mall somewhere or something, then they'd have to come out and say something. But it's going to be, they're not going to do it unless they absolutely have to. And that's also in particular with alien beings, non-terrestrial beings. We're not going to get any type of information about that unless we have to get it.
Exactly, unless they're threatening to turn up en masse and show themselves, then I've got a funny feeling we'll never be getting that type of information from the government. But Lon, I mean, you've worked on Ancient Aliens, you've been on there. I mean, I think we've already got a plethora of evidence to prove that there has been visitation here, and maybe many times in the past. And I've been kind of going back further and further, trying to trace where we've come from. We were looking at Australia there the other day. We were looking at giant skulls and alien-looking skulls, and that's just one piece of this big puzzle that I think we've already had disclosure. We don't really need it from the government, and we're not going to get it from the government, right?
Yeah, well, my book was titled Alien Disclosure, Experiences Expose Reality, and basically that's where they come from. It's not something that the government has told us. It's what actual experiencers have told us has happened to them. And, I've been on a lot of cases over the years, a couple big cases actually, and we're not going to be told by the government what's really going on. That's just not going to happen. The only way we're going to get information is if people who have experienced it come forward and talk about it. And then it's up to us to just decide what to believe and what not to believe,
So, Lon, if somebody's had a sighting, before we wrap up today, how do people get in touch with you over at Phantoms and Monsters?
My phone number is listed there as well. You can call me at any time and call me direct.
Sounds good. And I was trying to call you. My Skype, I don't know, I'll need to reboot my Skype or something. It just wasn't going through. It kept on saying it couldn't connect you. Very rude of Skype. But Lon, I can't thank you enough for today. We have covered so many topics. And Jimmy, I bet you Lon feels like he's been probably sent to Gitmo and he's getting waterboarded for the past couple of hours. We've interrogated him that much.
No, he made me forget about everything, and I've enjoyed myself immensely. And thank you so much for the intelligent discourse and conversation about these subjects, because it's always good to find somebody that looks at things from an intellectual standpoint and really weighs them out before you come out with something. So it's really appreciated. I'm really grateful for being here. Thanks, Kev. Thanks for Lon.
Yeah, thank you, Lon. And I like a man like you that when you don't know, you say you don't know, and you give your opinion on something. I've always said to people, beware the ones that tell you they know everything. Because at the best of times, we've probably only got some pieces to the puzzle, and the rest of the pieces have been kind of handily inserted in there to mislead us. But when it comes to these topics, Lon Strickler is definitely up there in the top tier when it comes to woo. So be sure to check out Phantoms and Monsters website. That's phantomsandmonsters.com. And then you go to the other website, which is cryptidhunters.org. That's cryptidhunters.org. Lon's over there on Facebook. And of course, coming up right after today's show, don't go anywhere because the info just keeps on coming. And Lucky is next up with Quantum Connections right here on your number one network. Yep, it's your network because we are not controlled by anyone. We have listeners who support the network. And if you want to support the network, go to your favorite show page and get yourself a subscription. And it doesn't just get you your favorite shows back catalog, it opens up the vault to everything. So with that in mind, wherever you are, make it TFR and Denny touch that